Hello everyone, this is Jordan from PaneExcel.com, and today I'm going to show you some of the best controls for dynamic dashboards, as well as how to create and how to use them. One of the main advantages of presenting data in a dashboard is the ability to review metrics in a dynamic way and in a single view, meaning that you can change the period, group, or type of metrics currently shown and basically slice and dice the data however you want, so that the viewers can get the best possible understanding of the overall picture without scrolling through large worksheets. To create such a dynamic dashboard in Excel, you would have to use dynamic controls with which to change the visualizations and underlying tables. Fortunately, Excel has many options for that without the need for any complicated coding. Today we're going to go over the most often used Excel features to control dashboards, like slicers, drop-down menus, and form controls. All of the examples we'll show today, including the dashboard with all calculations and visualizations, will be provided to download for free on our website, so that you can review and practice everything you're about to see and bring your reports to a whole new level. We're also going to cover some dashboard best practices, like for example always keeping the calculations and raw data in separate sheets as we see here. Before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more free Excel tutorials. Let's start with the most straightforward and simple control, the slicer. Here we have an example dataset containing 3 KPIs, as well as their actual performance and target for 12 months. We're going to use this dataset for all our examples. Pivot tables and pivot charts are great for summarizing and refreshing data quickly in a dashboard, if the structure of the data allows it. The slicers are very easy and intuitive to create and use, and are irreplaceable when it comes to filtering and summarizing data in pivot charts and pivot tables. First, we'll need to create a pivot table. To add one, click on the dataset, go to Insert, and select Pivot Table. The default option is to create one in a new sheet. However, we're going to add it in the current one. Now, we'll build a simple pivot table showing the actual and target values for each month. Just drag the month in rows and actual and target in values. We now have successfully created a pivot table. However, it currently calculates the sum of the actual and target data for all KPIs. In order to show data in the table for a single KPI only, we can either add a filter or a slicer. A filter can be created by dragging the desired field into the filters area on the right. However, today we're going to use a slicer so that we can use it in our dynamic dashboard. To do that, we select the pivot table, go to the Pivot Table Analyze tab, and select Insert Slicer. We just need to select for which column we want to add it, and that's it. Now we can display in the table the values only for the metric we have selected. Remember that multiple slicers can be added for a single pivot table if needed. Let's change the format to percentages and remove the grand totals, so that we can add a nice actual versus target chart based on this pivot table. The pivot table grand totals can be removed from the Pivot Table Design tab. We have already covered how to create an advanced actual versus target dynamic Excel chart in another YouTube tutorial, so make sure to check it out for a detailed step-by-step guide by following the link in the description. Today we're going to use our Excel add-in Pane BI, which allows users to create advanced Excel charts in seconds and turn a workbook into amazing dashboards. Make sure to check it on our website for additional information. To create a chart with Pane BI, we select the chart that we want to add, then simply select the ranges with the actual and target values, as well as the months, and that's it. Pane BI automatically added the necessary calculations and generated an actual versus target chart, which looks great in dashboards. And best of all, it's dynamic, so that the slicers controlling the pivot table will update the chart as well. Don't forget that if 2 or more pivot charts have the same data source, then a single slicer can be used to control all of them at the same time. So let's create a second pivot table in which we will show the average actual result for the whole year for a single KPI. We can choose how the pivot table calculates the fields in the Value Field Settings options. There we'll change it from sum to average. To connect the existing slicer to the new pivot table, we just need to right-click it, go to Report Connections and select the desired table. As you can see, now both pivot tables are controlled with the same slicer. We can use Pane BI again to quickly add a Doughnut chart in order to help visualize the data in the second pivot table. A detailed step-by-step guide for this Doughnut chart is also available on our YouTube channel. We just need to link the chart actual value to the pivot table result. And at the end, we have two great dynamic charts controlled with a single slicer. Our dashboard is starting to take shape. Slicers can also be added to tables. This can make them very useful in some cases, for example, when we want to show data based only on the visible rows of a table. To add a table slicer, select the table, go to the Table Design tab and click on the Insert Slicer. Remember that the table slicers hide the rows in the worksheet for the non-selected values. Therefore, we move the table down a bit so that our calculations won't get hidden when using the slicer. There are many situations where using table slicers can be useful. For example, we can again display the average value for the whole year for a selected KPI, as we did before, but without using pivot tables. Using Pane BI, we will again quickly add a Gauss chart. In the chart template actual cell, we will write a subtotal formula, which will calculate the average value for all visible cells in the table column below. If we use the average formula, it will calculate the average for all values, regardless if the cells are visible or not. The subtotal formula will make sure only visible cells are taken into account. Now, as you can see, again we have a nice dynamic visualization of data by using table slicers. Next, we have a very popular control, the Dropdown Menu. It is a very versatile tool and you can use it to change reporting periods, KPIs, products and much more. A drop-down menu can be created in the following way. First, select the cell where you want to add it. Go to Data, Data Validation, and in the Settings menu choose List. In Source, you can either manually write the options for the drop-down menu or you can simply select a range. And that's it. You can go one step further and make the drop-down menu dynamic, so that you don't have to adjust it if a new value needs to be added. There are several ways to achieve that. My favorite is to use a table. To do that, we first have to create a table which will have the values for the drop-down menu. After adding the data, we'll format it as a table. Just select the range and go to Insert, Table. Now go through the same steps to create a drop-down menu, but for the source, make sure to select the column of the table. There, now when you add a new value in the table, it is automatically available in the drop-down menu as well. And when the value is deleted in the table, it is automatically removed from the drop-down menu. By using a drop-down menu, we can then create a dataset, which will be updated based on the selected value. To demonstrate this, we will create a table which shows the actual and target values per month only for the selected KPI. The end result will be similar to the pivot table example, however here we will achieve that without any pivot tables or slicers. In order to get the actual value for the selected KPI, we are going to use an array index match formula, which will allow us to get the data based on multiple criteria, in this case based on the selected KPI and on the month for the respective row. The formula will index the actual column from the dataset, then match the month in the new table with the month from the dataset, and selected KPI from the drop-down menu with the KPI column in the dataset. At the end, when applying the formula, don't forget to press Ctrl, Shift and Enter together, as this is an array formula. As this advanced formula is a bit difficult to understand so fast, you can download the file from our website in order to review the formula in more details. For the target, we will just use a simple VLOOKUP to get the data from the small table. Let's just change the format to percentages and we are ready. Our table now gets automatically updated when a different metric is added from the drop-down menu. Finally, we can again use Pane BI to add an actual versus target chart based on this table as we did before. Now let's move to the more advanced controls, the form controls, which can be added from the Developer tab. If you don't see it, you can add it by going to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, select Developer and click OK. Now go to the Developer tab and click on Insert. Here we have two main groups, Form Controls and ActiveX Controls. The main differences between the two types are that the ActiveX controls are a bit more flexible in terms of use and design customization. Both types can be used with or without macros, however, the form controls are supported in older Excel versions, can be used on Mac computers, and this is why we're going to focus on them today. We're not going to go through all of the controls, as many of them can be used in a very similar way. What is important is to understand the main principles behind them and what options do they give. Let's start with the combo box. It is very similar to the simple drop-down menu that we just saw in terms of look and feel. However, it works differently. When you add it, right-click it and go to Format Control. In the Form Control window, there are several tabs with which you can adjust the control to a specific size, to lock it when using protected sheets, as well as to change the object positioning in relation to the cells. By default, if the cells behind the control change size, it is going to as well. If your dashboard will dynamically resize or hide cells, then you can select the Don't Move or Size with Cells option in order to keep it in place. Still, the main tab here is the Control tab, in which the actual setup is made. Here you can see that we need to select Input Range and Cell Link. The input range will be the range with values that we want to choose from, while the cell link will be the index showing which value we have selected. The drop-down lines show the number of lines you want displayed when the down arrow is clicked. For example, if your list has 10 items, you can change the default number to 10 so that all of them are shown. If the number is less than the number of items in your list, a scroll bar is displayed. So let's create a dataset which will fit our combo box. The first column will be for the index, in order to help us with the other support calculations later on. Format the data as a table again, so that the list can be automatically updated when a new metric is added. Now open the Format Control options. For Input Range, select the Matrix column and set the cell link to a blank cell in the worksheet. And that's it. Now the index is changed based on the selection from the combo box. You can see here why we needed the index column. It will allow us to use a VLOOKUP to create further calculations based on the combo box value. We can use this in order to build a similar table to the one from our previous example, where the actual and target values are dynamically changed based on the selection from the combo box. Again, we use the multiple criteria array index match formula. And this is the final setup. The combo box changes the index value in cell P2 based on the selection. A VLOOKUP formula then shows which KPI is selected in cell P3 based on the index in cell P2. In the last table, the index match formula displays the actual value based on the KPI in cell P3 for the respective row. Finally, as each KPI has a single target regardless of the month, we use the VLOOKUP to display it from column M, based on the selection in cell P3. Now we have a dynamic table, based on which we can once again add a nice actual versus target chart using Pane BI. Perfect. The list box form control works in more or less the same way as the combo box. The difference is that all selection options can be visible at the same time. The list box is again set up from the Format Control menu, and technically works in a very similar way to the combo box. Again, we need to specify the input range and cell link. Make sure to leave the selection type to single. The multi and extend selection types are used when you want to be able to select more than one value at the same time. These are more advanced functions and we're going to leave them for another video. We can link it to our existing calculations so that both the combo box and list box control the same table and chart. You can even see that this way, if the value is changed in one of the controls, it is automatically changed in the other one as well. Of course, they don't have to be connected together. You can have multiple form controls in the same worksheet, which are part of completely different calculations. Next, let's move to the scroll bar. The scroll bar works by changing the value of a single cell in increments. It can be created both horizontal and vertical. This depends on whether you drag the mouse to the right or down when creating it. There are many options that you can choose, like minimum, maximum values, incremental and page changes. We can use it in a similar way as the other form controls until now. For example, we can set it up to select the months within a year in order to display the result for a specific KPI. First, we have to create a table which will feed the scroll bar. Here is also a quick tip. If you have a number or a month name, select it and drag the selection down. Excel will automatically try to fill in the values by displaying the next number or month. Then let's go to the format control options and set it up. First we have the current value, which will be displayed after we click OK. Then we have the minimum and maximum values, which define the minimum and maximum positions of the scroll bar. Finally, the cell link will display the index for the selected value as with the previous form controls. The incremental change shows by how much the value of the cell will change from a single click. The page change shows by how much the value of a cell will change if you click in the area between the arrows. After setting up the scroll bar, we can now use it to change the selected month. Here as well, we can use the VLOOKUP to show which month is selected from the scroll bar based on the index value. We can integrate this, for example, in an advanced bullet chart, which we can again create quickly with Pane BI. The value which we want to show is the actual KPI1 result for the selected month. Once again, we're going to use the multiple criteria array index match formula. Finally, we just need to link the actual cell value of the bullet chart with the calculations and we're done. The scroll bar now dynamically controls for which month the result is displayed in the bullet chart. Next is the spin button, which works in exactly the same way as the scroll bar. The main difference is that you don't see the value range, as you get only two arrows to work with. Similar to what we did in the combo box and list box example, we can set it up so that we have two controls for the same variable. Here, however, we can try something different. We can make it control the target level in the bullet chart in 10 points increments. This makes using the chart more engaging and gives additional dynamic control over it. Generally, spin buttons are more often used to control a value in larger ranges, while the scroll bar is used for smaller thresholds, where it is important for the users to see where they are within a range. So this can be one way to distinguish between the two controls, although they are very interchangeable. Next, we have the option buttons. They work by changing a value in a target cell and thus showing which one is selected. You can use them all together or you can split them in separate groups. If you want to have several groups with independent cell links, you would need to create the option buttons within a group box for each separate group. Today, however, we won't be needing this as we are going to use only one group. In this case, we can use them as an alternative way to dynamically change the KPI for which the data is displayed. As in our previous examples, we are going to create a reference table which will help us with the calculations, and we are going to use a VLOOKUP to display which KPI is actually selected. The logic is the same as before, but this time we will display the average result for a selected KPI and we will add a different Pane BI chart, a speedometer. For the actual value, this time we're going to use an average if formula, which will show us the average actual percentage for the whole year for the selected KPI. Great. Finally, we have the checkbox, which returns a simple true or false value depending on whether it's selected or not. In the Pane BI speedometer chart, the target line will not be displayed if the target value cell is empty. So we can use the checkbox to show or hide the target line from the speedometer. Make sure when creating the checkbox to set the value options to either unchecked or checked. The mixed value will return an NA error in the linked cell. The option is more commonly used in more advanced cases and with combination with VBA. We are going to use an if formula, which will display a blank value in the target cell if the show target checkbox is clear. If it is selected, the formula will VLOOKUP the target for the selected KPI. There! Now we have a very engaging and dynamic speedometer, which is controlled entirely by option buttons and a checkbox, perfect for amazing dashboards. These are all some rather basic examples of what can be achieved with dynamic controls in dashboards in order to make them more flexible, engaging, easier to work with and to understand. As you can see, the form controls are definitely not that complicated as they may first seem. They can be a great time saver and incredibly useful when set up correctly. And if you introduce VBA to the whole picture, then you can really create all sorts of interesting functions. Still, you don't need to use macros in order to create beautiful dynamic dashboards like this one, which will definitely impress your colleagues and customers. The only thing missing here is a nice navigation menu, which the users can use to go through the different sheets instead of using the sheet tabs. A much more modern and engaging way to navigate through a dashboard workbook. You can check our tutorial on how to create a navigation menu pane. However, as it may take several minutes to create one, we're going to once again use Pane BI in order to add a navigation menu in seconds. We just have to hide all the sheets that we want to exclude from the navigation menu, and then we can add it from the menu in the ribbon. Awesome, and it looks and works great. Don't forget that this workbook will be available to download for free from our website. Just follow the link in the description. Also, make sure to check out Pane BI on our website for additional information and to see how it can save you countless hours. If you found this video useful, please press the like button and share it so that more people can learn how to improve their Excel reports and dashboards. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, please subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so that you can be the first to know about it. This was Jordan from PaneExcel.com. Thank you very much for watching.